Well, we keep our eyes on what is playing out in the nation's capital, Abuja, with the planned protests today, as we also look back on the NSAS protests from October the 20th, 2020. So while we'll be giving you updates, particularly from different areas in the nation's capital, Abuja, bearing in mind the court's order asking that, well, yes, the protests can hold, but not in certain, areas that are very important, the places like Aso Villa, the National Assembly, and the rest. But we'll be speaking eventually with one of the leaders of the protest, Mr. Moyele Sowore, who's expected to join us on the program today. But let's talk about the economy. Lots of numbers came out in the past few days. Inflation figures came out, and in spite of that, a lot of people have said, well, I don't quite understand these inflation figures. It shows that inflation is reducing from 20.1 to it has reduced even below 20, but I'm not feeling it in my pocket. And of course, the projections for GDP growth, the IMF, the IMF data as well for the fastest growing economy. Anyway, let's put all of this together as we're joined on the program by Professor Kenny Faye, developmental economist, joins us virtually on the program. Good morning, Prof. Welcome to the program.
Morning. It's been long. I've not spoken to you for a very long time.
Well, indeed it has, but I've been keeping track with your work as well. And we had to bring you on the program, Prof, this morning to quickly speak to issues around the economy. The inflation figures came out, and it looks like the more inflation figures come out and we see a drop, the more people suspect some sort of hanky-panky. They keep wondering, what does inflation really mean? Because I see that it is dropping, but I don't quite feel it in my pocket. So it's either one of these things or a combination of all of them. Either the calculation is wrong, someone is not calculating the right thing, or they're calculating one thing and I am measuring something else entirely, or something is just wrong somewhere. So, Prof, how do you explain to the average Nigerian this inflation matter?
Well, let me take them together, because what has happened is that we have a historic moment where the World Bank came out with their report, IMF came out with their report, NESG did their something, and then MBS put out their inflation and GDP figures. All of them at the same time. They raised two critical issues: the quality of the GDP growth rates, the quality of the inflation figures. These are two major issues that they raise. Let's come from GDP growth. Now, if you break it down, there are big questions about the inclusivity of the growth. You see, you are getting 4.2%, but that growth is not inclusive. Why? Because it is not leading to employment, is not leading to poverty reduction. It is not even spreading out to cater for the 42 million MSMEs or account for their access to growth and front and all. It excludes them. Number two, that growth is not sustainable. It is still not sustainable for some of the reasons I have mentioned and a bit more that I'm going to mention. Three, there is something about the quality of it, because it's not delivering the things you expect it to deliver. Then you come to, I'm going to the details, you come to the inflation. Inflation, what we have is not a straightforward inflation, and I've said it many times. What we have is stagflation. And stagflation is the most complicated form of inflation, where all the possible types of inflation are active simultaneously. Rarely do you have it in other economies. It's only two at a time or one at a time. Our own, four are happening simultaneously. So you may tinker with one or two, you get a drop, but the other two are also haunting you. Let me explain. You know we have massive cash in the system because you have 32 trillion ways and means, which is the middle name of that is inflation printed. And so you are left with, and there's a huge capital inflow to the private sector. So all of this liquidity is what monetary policies are sucking away from the system with all the inflation targeting that they are doing. But you have another one, which is called, so this, what I described here is called demand pool inflation, because this heavy money, a large amount of money is chasing fewer goods and services. And you didn't produce this money on account of productivity gain. No, You can print money, but you print money under some conditions. One, that somebody has sent in $20 billion into your economy, so you've got to print naira to enable them to do the work in the country. Or there is massive productivity gain in the country. You're producing more, so you need to raise the cash available to be able to purchase the excess. None of this is the case. You're just printing inflation. Now, the second one is what you call cost push inflation, structural. And that is so active because you have high rising cost of transportation, energy. Look at band A is 220 naira. I can't process my cassava and certain staples with that kind of cost. Then you have all this other electricity costs and all of that. All that input costs, especially transportation when it comes to food, is big time here. Of course, you have insecurity that also takes a big toll on all other factors of production. Now you have the third one, which is imported inflation. And this is beginning to open our corridor to where the answers of all the contradictions are going to be. You have an import-dependent economy. When you have import-dependent economy, anything that happens globally will affect you. It doesn't matter whether it is COVID-19, supply chain disruption, American subprime property crisis, Russia crisis. What has Russia crisis got to do with Nigeria? We have gas and oil. They have gas and oil. Why? Because Russia controls 40% of gas to Europe. So when they started turning down that tap, prices went high. We are the second trading partner to Europe. So all we're importing from there are importing inflation. Then the fourth one, people don't talk about this. You are feeding 300 million people, not 230 million, because you are surrounded by Francophone countries. And what has happened with that relationship is that they actually depend on you for their food. Look at the Niger, Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso. They depend on you because you have the fertile land, you have to produce the food, and they're buying the food without paying in dollar. In naira is what they even use to settle, not even franc CFA. Why is it material? Let me tell you why it's material. I'm from ECOWAS Commission over the last 15 years. When we go out to these countries, 1 naira buys 3 CFA. But now 1 naira cannot buy 1 CFA, it buys 0.7 CFA. So this apple that I buy in any market here, Otako, for 800 naira, when I go to Semeboda, you can check. It's 3,000 naira that I pay for this apple. So it reflects the devaluation in our money, almost 80%. So these people are buying our food. They don't need to go to China anymore. Anything you get from Nigeria, you can make 200% profit just across the border. So that is the issue. Now, so it's all about import dependence, one. Then two, you have a differential currency regime that has rendered your food supply incapable of meeting. The food system cannot meet the demand. So you keep having food inflation, food inflation. Now, food inflation has tempered down. Why? Because imported. You did rapid importation to stem down the price. Of course, we're also doing something about cassava, gari, and all the other people are doing something.
All right. Professor Ife, your analysis is quite descriptive, and that leads me to my next question. So if all are in the mix, demand pull inflation, cost pull inflation, import driven inflation, if they're all in the mix, the question is, does the NBS data adequately captures all of these implications and factors affecting our own market before it arrives at the data that it puts out that has seen a reduction in inflation and yet a variance with what is happening in the market?
No, I go to market almost every day. There is drop in the prices of food, many items. There's a reasonable drop. Plantain, I'm buying at half the price. Gari is dropped. That can see drop in the price of food. But this data does not tell you where the drop is coming from. It doesn't tell you that some food have been imported. Okay, it doesn't tell you that, okay, we now have a policy of 30% value addition, mandatory value addition. That is going to affect border trade, cross-border trade. So we are now going to begin to restrict the outflow of raw material unless 30%. So, but it won't tell you where it is coming from. It wouldn't tell you the profile of all the 4 different inflations I mentioned. So you are still going to see some drop. And tomorrow now you can have a quick rise and it still won't tell you. It only tell you that there is a rise, but it won't tell you the quality of it and whereabouts it comes from. Just as the GDP tells you. Now, the GDP figure is the one that really, really hurts, because if you look at the two reports, all of them were hammering on fiscal efficiency. Now, fiscal efficiency is not equal to raising revenue. That you have achieved your target in September of 36 trillion naira does not make you fiscally efficient. That, look, let me give you two examples. If you look at the trade facilitation, WTO says 15% of our trade is lost to trade facilitation, lack of trade facilitation. Nigeria's import and export is $120 billion. Can you imagine that $18 billion of that money is lost because of lack of trade facilitation? Who pays that bill? Private sector. Can government raise 18 billion in tax revenue in the border? No, they won't. What are the consequences? Nigerian traders go to Cotonou to buy their goods and bring them through the porous border. They go to Lome. They are moving away because we have not implemented the national single window that guarantees 24-hour clearance. They are taking 2 weeks, paying for trailer. Come on. So they are voting with their feet. So now that is one. The second one is what else can you actually do with the borrowing that you are doing? The borrowing is not fiscally efficient because it is borrowed outside the law. The law is Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 that tells you what you can borrow, why you can borrow, how the tenure of the borrowing, the economic test that you have to meet. Because you are missing on those, then you are borrowing, the money you are borrowing is not efficient. If I have 2 minutes, I can give you an example. The law says borrow only for capital expenditure and human resource development, only long-term borrowing, 10 to 30 years, only for short concessionary loans, just less than 3%. When you borrow at 3% for 20 years and you are going to go to Euro bond to take at 10% dollar and then use it to finance 1 year, 2 years to finance a long-term borrowing, that is a mismatch. That is a mismatch. And then when you don't submit this borrowing to the test, the law says carry out cost-benefit analysis. That law wants you to look at economic importance. They look at all that where you are borrowing. I don't see those. I keep asking for those 10 years, they won't give you. So that means that the borrowing that you are doing is fiscally not responsible, because you cannot borrow money to pay salaries or to pay for conditional cash transfer. You can't. There are things that we are banned from borrowing under the law, but you are doing those. Now, I told World Bank time and time, stop lending money for purposes of conditional transfer and let's use our cash. Give us your grant. So now they now come in their third recommendation. They now recommended it now in their third recommendation that government should expand safety net, but using their own internal generated revenue. So these are the fiscal inefficiencies that are causing the distortion that we are getting in the GDP figures.
All right. Before we lose sight of the conversation, you also mentioned earlier that there's also an element of importation that has been done, which has impacted on the price of food. We know that there was supposed to be a 3-month window of exemption of tariff for importation of food that never came through. So where did you get your own information about importation, and what has been imported that has significantly impacted on the price of food?
Do your homework. It's not something that I will give you the number, but do your
but that's why you're here, Prof. That's why you are here. It's part of the homework.
I have far more incisive data to discuss with you on the quality of your GDP growth and the inflation figure that you have. Let's not chase shadow. There are far more critical things on the horizon that we're going to deal with. If you let me tell you something. Why is the growth of the Asian tiger economies resulting in 400 million people sent out of poverty by China? Over 200 million from Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea. The reason is because of the quality of their growth. Their growth is export-led growth. Export-led growth.
Prof, you haven't told us what was imported.
They are investing in the middle, they are investing in the value chain. We are not investing in the value chain. We are producing raw materials and we are consuming goods. You are not in the value chain. You are producing cocoa, palm oil, everything, but you are not in the value chain that actually adds value. So that's why you are. So consequently, you are importing those things. You give them raw material, you import finished goods. You are not in the value chain. If you are in any of these two or both of them, you will be losing your jobs. Because what you are doing is that you're exporting your jobs and you are importing poverty. That is exactly what it means. So we need to go for export-led growth backed with industrialization, and then make sure that all the macroeconomic parameters, all the 6 macroeconomic policies point at industrialization, starting with fiscal policy, monetary policy, trade policy, industrial policy, investment policy. They all have to point at industrialization in a way that we have never talked about it before.
Prof, you still haven't told us what was imported. You haven't told us what was imported, but we're going to have to make progress now if you would not provide that information. Let's get to the exclusion of Nigeria from IMF's assessment on the back of the spring meetings that have just been concluded, that lists Rwanda, Uganda, Benin Republic, Ethiopia as fastest growing economies on the continent. Help us understand the exclusion of Nigeria despite, 2 quarters of consecutive economic growth recorded.
No, if you look at the numbers that they posted for them, we didn't break into that line. The number, just looking at their own numbers, quite different from our own number, because our own number, their projection for us was 3.9%, which was even below the threshold of those ones that they know the number. But the reality is that what our NPS quoted is 4.2. So they didn't take it into account. But as I said to you, these are numbers. In fact, by the end of the year, we could actually increase to about 4.5 to even 5 or 4.6 or so. But that is academic. It is academic because they too are revising our figure, but nowhere near what our own NBS is giving us. So it's not something I'm losing sleep with. What I'm going to have to tackle is why is it that the so-called 4.2 growth does not lead to any, in fact, more people are going into poverty. More people are not getting jobs because of the quality of the growth and because of the import dependency and because of the fact that, see, all the indices are positive. You see, all the macroeconomic indicators are positive and convergent. All of them. If you look at trade surplus, look at the growth, look at the forex, all of them are positive, even balance of payment. But these macroeconomic indicators are necessary, but not sufficient conditions to lift people out of poverty, to give people employment, to generate the kind of sustainable and a growth that you need to drive the economy. That is the summary of what is going on. So let's not move the argument in any other direction than to focus on what will change the status quo. These numbers are important. When I spoke at NESG, I said to them, Africa continental free is an opportunity. Please keep trading services apart because they are doing well without government support. All we need from government is go and sort out regulation with them so that they can move into Africa well. After all, the banks are there, everyone is there. All of them are moving. They're all in Africa. Focus on trading goods because Nigeria does not have any good to trade in Africa. You are not going to carry your raw material to African countries. That is the problem. So that's where you have to interrogate because that is where you're exporting your jobs. That's where you're getting poorer and poorer. And that's why your GDP cannot keep up. Today is 400, today 250, it's going up and down just because of this same reason.
So why do you think government policy is not translating into the requisite foreign direct investment that will retain those jobs at home through physical investment and translate into economic transformation? What is missing in government policy at home? Because they have been promised investment through Mr. President's marketing of Nigeria, but we're yet to see it.
Good question. You can have foreign direct investment, but it may not necessarily result in local employment. Let me give you an example. 80% of the manufacturing capacity in Nigeria are dependent on imported raw material. So that was why central bank was the center, the epicenter of forex, because manufacturers are asking them for money. And when the new administration came and sanitized the sector and pushed this away into the free market, they started packing their bags and going to Ghana. They can go. Do you understand? So you better understand the under. So, and then secondly, when you call GDP, please always remember that there are 4 indicators, 4 pillars of GDP. Any of those or 2 of them can give you growth, but may not be all the 4. One is household consumption, 78% of GDP. What you consume, because that increase, this is aggregate demand going up, GDP goes up. Then government spending, less than 10%, about 7 to 8%. It is not big, but it is very important. But that is when government borrows money. You see government spending, GDP is going up, but it is borrowing money, and that money that is being borrowed is not efficient, is not fiscally efficient. So it will be doing more damage to inflation because it is going straight to consumption. But then GDP is going up. Then the other two are balance of payment, thank God, is now positive. It was even $6.8 billion. The other, they used to be negative, and 6.2% of our GDP. So that is positive, is going up. Good news. But the fourth one is investment from private sector. Now, from January, the new tax reform will help them because they can keep not only 25 but 50 million, so they can save more jobs, they can create more jobs, and there will be more in aggregate output. GDP goes up. So always look at those four variables and which ones are actually making you get a big number. It is not investment that is giving you the number. It is not domestic consumption of output. Government production is going up, and government is not directing that consumption to helping manufacturers buy their goods through trade policy. So let's connect the dots, and you can understand why this thing seems confusing to everybody, but it's very, very clear if you look at the detail.
All right.
Detail that's behind it.
All right, and thank you for helping us understand all of the figures. And you know, we're going to keep our eyes on the numbers, particularly as we expect another, inflation figure for the month of October. Professor Ken Ife is a development economist. Thank you for coming through on this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll begin our conversation on the 5th anniversary of the hashtag EndSARS protest. How far so far? Stay with us, we'll be right back.